Hey YouTube, today I'm going to go over some troubleshooting tips on a vanagon that I know of that might help you fix your vehicle. I started having issues with my vehicle a number of years ago, and it was just not running as good. So I finally got around to going through a bunch of stuff, and so I'm just going to go over a few things today that I did to the vehicle, and hopefully it will help. So first off, this is the 2.1 liter engine for the Vanagon. It's, I guess, the newer one up until they stopped importing it to the United States in 1991. So this is actually a 1991 Vanagon. So I guess it's the newest one that you can have, unless you imported a newer one. Everything's complete in here right now, except for I'll point out that the power steering pump right here, I have the belt off just because it leaks power steering fluid up front in the steering rack, because that's something I haven't fixed. I have to replace the seals on it. But okay, so I'll just start going through here what worked for me, or what I did. Or I'll just show you the parts also too, to where to locate them. So underneath here, this is a relay box on the left side, the rear left side. Underneath here is a coil, and I mean all parts go bad at some point. So I replaced this coil. I bought this on eBay, and it's you have to take off some bolts to take all the stuff apart to get it out. It's actually clamped on right here, but I took the whole thing off just to make it easy. And this big clamp is clamped into the sidewall, so I took all of the screws and bolts off to get this out. And it just has has one main wire, which is your lead wire that goes to your distributor, and then it has a couple other smaller wires. You want to keep track of which ones go where. There's one on top and one on bottom. What's blocking me? Okay. And put them back on the same way you did before. Inside this box, it pops open. I actually found that you had to remove, for me, actually all you have to do is remove this one screw. You can get this box to slide out. That's how you can lift the lid. There's a couple relays in there, I believe 2, and I replaced those. The biggest one that most people seem to recommend replacing when you have poor starts and a rough running vehicle, or doesn't stay running once you start it, is going to be your temp 2 sensor. So it's in the back left all the way down here. This is your temp 2 coolant sensor, and it hooks into it's a hard plastic piece for the coolant, and it has this spring clip that you are going to pry. This is the top of it, so it has 2 sides, and you want to pull those up and out with a pick, and you can pull this straight back, this part, after you get those sides lifted up. You can either use a small screwdriver or a pick to get the sides of this clip. You can see how it goes up back there. You want to get them up, pry that hump up, and then you can pull it out. And then the type 2 sensor, that plug will get you the electrical to disconnect, is that little clip. And then once you do that, there's an even bigger clip here. It's like a horseshoe kind of, and that you pry out again with a pick or a screwdriver. It's this metal, little metal one right here. This is the actual sensor between the 2 clips. So when you pull that out, it gushes out coolant, and you want to stick the new one in right away so you don't lose a bunch of coolant. But that's a big one. I actually was going to replace the fuel pressure regulator, which is right here. I didn't get to it. It's old, as you can tell, but it runs fine now. Runs like a top. So I did not have to replace the fuel pressure regulator. It has 4 sides. So when you go on eBay and look for buying a fuel pressure regulator, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 hoses. You're going to find a lot of other fuel pressure regulators that are cheaper that only have 3 connections. That's for the older engines. So for the newer 2.1, it's got to have 4 fuel line hoses connections, and so that's like an $80 part. And so don't buy the three-legged one, because you'll be returning it, because you're not going to work. This is your air idle stabilizer for the engine. There are a lot of recommendations to replace this. So again, here's a similar clip. This metal clip right here is similar to what you get on that coolant type 2 temperature sensor. These little clips right here, that bottom part that's moving, you want to lift that up and up so that you can pull the top, which is, this is the top. So for that to go out that way, you got to unclip both of these on each side to get it up away from that part that it's clipped into. So that one, I believe it's about $120. A lot of people say that fixes a lot of their issues, but mine works fine, so I didn't have to go that far and take that one out. Another one is, well, and for those of you who don't know, this is the air stabilizer screw that you can adjust with the screwdriver, clockwise or counterclockwise, which will change the air idle a little bit. This is your idle throttle body. So that little screw is right below it, and that won't usually solve all of your problems, but you can smooth it out a little bit. There's also another one of those air idle screws right here in this plug. I never even figured out how to get the plug out. You're supposed to drill a hole and pull it out. I couldn't figure out how to pull that plug out, so I never had to mess with it. And I would also say, unless you really know what you're doing, this right here is the airflow meter. It's on top of the air box. This is the air filter box. And so this airflow meter here, you take the box apart, and then this has screws inside. You can unbolt it. If you're going to take that apart and work on it or fix it or adjust it, I'd recommend you really know what you're doing first before you do that. And it likely isn't your problem, but you'd be better off probably replacing it outright, or buying the whole air box and the airflow meter rather than trying to take this apart. And so I've heard so many people say that taking this apart and adjusting it is usually not your problem. So, but what actually I think was one of my problems was, or if it was, is you might need to do an airflow meter modification, a mod, and the recommendation is that you can put this little capacitor inside the plug here, the connection for your airflow meter, or inside. I actually took the lid off, and inside here where the wires come in, you can solder on a capacitor on one of the wires, and so there are videos for that. And actually, if I can find it, well, they say what type. Those videos will tell you what type of capacitors that you need. Either go on, I don't think there's that many videos, but on just Googling it, you can find out articles about the airflow meter mod. So maybe do that, but you're going to have to pry off the silicone. There's a silicone here, and I silicone mine back on, so you want to seal that up really well. That's probably not where you want to start taking stuff apart, but it's usually more of that you try the airflow meter mod before you try adjusting the airflow meter, because there's some really sensitive little parts and pieces in there. You probably don't want to mess with it if you're not really proficient at what you're doing. So another one that I did is, in case you don't know where the fuel injectors are, they're on either side of the engine. So we're going to go down this side, and you got these two connectors in the middle here. These are wiring to your injectors, and they're actually not that hard to pull off, the actual injectors, to remove them. These are those same clips. You can see that pressed down, it's got those little tabs sticking out on the bottom. You got the same procedure for taking the other ones off, and then your electrical will come out, You got a Phillips head screwdriver to undo it from the fuel lines, and then the injector is actually only held on. The two injectors together are only held on with one bolt mounted to the what is that? That is, I believe, part of the head. So I actually took my injectors off and cleaned them. I soaked them in gasoline. That's all I had to do for that. I could tell that they were working. So they're really old, but I just cleaned them out. It's a couple $100 to buy them new. So I tried to find other cheaper fixes. The O2 temperature sensor was only about, if I remember right, it was only about 10 bucks, maybe 10 or 12 bucks. And then the capacitors that I got for this that I soldered on, I had to get a solder gun and a solder spool of wire, but that was a couple bucks. The capacitors were like, if you look right online and get them at the right price, I got them for like 20 cents a piece. I bought a bag of them and only needed one, so that was a really cheap fix. I believe that was actually the main fix, and then the type 2 temperature sensor. And then another one is common things you want to do is replacing your cap. So this is the cap and rotor. This is the distributor that goes right into the engine. There are a lot of tutorials on how to actually replace the whole thing. If you think it's really old and bad, you can just pull out the whole distributor. But start off with just buying a cap, which is about 10 bucks. And underneath is a rotor that is in the middle and just lifts off, and you can put a new one on. Sometimes you can just clean them off inside there, but if they have any age on them, just replace them. And then you got your wires, and the wires on the vanagon are not that common. I pull one off, but I don't want to because I don't want to wear them out. But they're not the cheapest spark plug wires that there are. They're a less common type, but definitely replace those, because what is common in the vanagons is the wires have a ring clip. More likely your type will have a ring clip inside of them, and those rust and corrode. So that for a long time my vanagon was running bad because there was corrosion in the connections between the wires and then the cap, and so that helped just by getting new ones that were not rusty. And so in fact I also added dielectric grease to the contacts, because the dielectric grease keeps the contacts dry. So obviously moisture had got in there because they were disintegrating. The metal contacts were disintegrating and rusted. So definitely get some dielectric grease on those connections inside there, on all of them, including, I didn't have rusting at the connection to the coil, but go ahead and do it anyways. Hey guys, well I guess the video went a little long, so that was part 1. So if you want to see part 2, there's more tips and tricks. It'll be part 2 under my channel's name is Kind of Homesteading. So and it'll be part 2. The name of the video, I believe I'm calling it Vanagon Tips and Fixes. So and it'll be part 2. Just look for that. All right, thanks.